to begin the class session. First of all, subscribe to our channel. What I want to say to the YouTube audience is to please subscribe and click or whatever it is that you do on like, thumbs up, so that we can get more exposure, hopefully. To subscribe to the John Ray channel. To click on thumbs up, I like. All right, we're at lesson number 6 in the great prayers of the Bible. We have one more in this unit. It'll be next week will be Paul's prayer for the churches. But today it's Jesus' prayer of surrender. And it's in Matthew, where our study text is in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. You can see these 3 Gospels. Last week we were only in John chapter 17. And of course I did some of chapter 16 and some of chapter 18 to cover the whole subject. But today we're in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and a little bit in John. We've got one verse in John, and that's where I would like to start. So if you would open your Bible to John chapter 18, verse 1. And I read this last week. We went over this, but I want to show you the best illustration of what I have is very tiny on here. This white rectangle. This shows the Mount of Olives over here, and it shows the city of Jerusalem. This is the temple area, and the eastern wall of Jerusalem. And there's a valley in between the eastern wall of Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives, where this seems to have taken place. Now, what John said in verse 1 of chapter 18, if you look at it, it says, when Jesus had spoken these words, he went forth with his disciples over the brook Cedron, where was a garden, into the which he entered and his disciples. Okay, so there's a valley between here and here. You know what happens in the middle of, or at the bottom of a valley? There's a brook, or a creek, something that flows there. And that's what this is talking about in John chapter 18, verse 1. He went outside the city of Jerusalem and went down the hill, across that brook, and then back up the hill on the other side to about roughly halfway up the side of the Mount of Olives, as I understand it. And the brook Cedron was at the bottom of that valley. And now, if you would, just turn with me to Mark chapter 26. And we'll do the rest of the lesson in the order in which it's listed in the study text in our little book. Matthew chapter 26. There's a bunch of sixes here. Matthew chapter 26, verses 36 through 46. Did you get all those sixes? So here we are in 26 and 36. It says, Then cometh Jesus with them unto a place called Gethsemane. Well, that's the garden that I just described to you. My understanding is that this is, at least for young guys 30 years old, which is roughly what their ages were, this is like a 20-minute walk down a hill, across the creek, and then up the other hill part way. So it wasn't a long distance. For an old guy like me, it'd take longer than 20 minutes. And besides that, somebody'd have to help me across the creek.
I can handle the creek, it's just that hill.
Yeah, well, the hill too, you're right. Verse 36 again, Then cometh Jesus with them unto a place called Gethsemane. And he said unto the disciples, Sit ye here while I go and pray yonder. Now, I want you to notice these things in Matthew, because when we read Mark and Luke, it's the same prayer. He didn't pray it 3 times. It's just 3 different guys writing about the prayer that he prayed. Okay? But each one of them give little different details so that we understand it a little bit different with each one. But he said at the end of verse 36 in red, Jesus talking, you guys sit right here while I go and pray yonder. He didn't ask them to pray. He didn't ask them to watch. He didn't ask them to do anything in Mark's writing except to just sit here. Sit here while I go pray. Verse 37. And he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee. So the indication there is he had 11 guys with him, not 12, because Judas had betrayed him, or was going to betray him. He was off somewhere making a deal with the elders of the church and the priests of the church to betray Jesus. So he had 11, and when he said, sit ye here at the end of verse 36, he was talking to 8 of them. You guys sit right here. But then he took, verse 37, took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and very heavy. Then said he unto them, my soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death. Tarry ye here, you 3 guys. And he said to them, watch with me. Verse 39. And he went a little further, and he fell on his face. That doesn't mean he tripped his, it didn't mean he stubbed his toe and fell on his face. It means that he, on purpose, fell or went or got down on the ground, face down, fell on his face, and he prayed. Oh, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I wilt, or I will, but as thou, or you, will, or wilt. It says, verse 40. After he was there face down, see, I'm adding some stuff. This is the St. John version. After he was there face down praying for a while, he got up in verse 40, and he cometh unto his disciples, and he found them asleep, and he said unto Peter, what? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch, I say to you, watch, I say, and pray that ye enter not into temptation. Now he says, I know that the spirit is willing. Yeah, but the flesh is weak. That watch and pray kind of thing, it reminds me of a story, a personal experience. It really has nothing to do with this lesson kind of thing, but we were living in Dallas at the time. So this goes all the way back into the 1970s sometime, and there was our denomination was having a big meeting downtown at the convention center, and us local churches had taken it upon ourselves somehow. I don't know how it was organized, don't remember. To carry on a 24-hour prayer chain for this meeting that was going on. And they had arranged for us to have a hotel room, not a regular hotel room with a bed in it and that sort of thing, but there was a room in a hotel. It was the Adolphus Hotel, downtown Dallas. And they wanted everybody, all the men, to sign up for 24, they wanted 24 guys to sign up for an hour to go down there and find that room and pray and carry on prayer for that convention. Well, I said to them, you guys go ahead, find 23 fellas, and whatever hour is left, I'll take that one. Well, it was, I think, 2 o'clock, as I recall, 2 a.m. So I get up from my own bed and go downtown and park and go in the Adolphus Hotel and go in this prayer room. And I relieved the fellow who was there, the 1 o'clock prayer, and he was there. But then came 3 o'clock and nobody showed up. So I stayed there and kept on praying. And then 4 o'clock came, and the 4 o'clock guy didn't show up. So I kept praying. And I don't remember now how long I stayed. I don't know whether it was the 5 o'clock guy that didn't show up and I stayed another hour. I don't remember. What I can tell you is that the weather was storming outside. And so somebody who was in charge of that had called those, like the 3 o'clock and the 4 o'clock and the 5 o'clock guys, and said, look, the weather's so bad out there, we don't want you to go. What they failed to do was they failed to call me in the position I was in, laying on my face praying before God. So I had a good time. All that time, the storm outside didn't bother me any. I was all protected from that, watching and praying. Eventually somebody showed up. I don't know what hour it was, but eventually somebody showed up to relieve, not me, but I was the one that was there, so they did relieve me, but the point is they thought they was relieving somebody else. Anyway, I can tell you that I've experienced some of this. Pray for an hour, watch for an hour. Could you not even do it 1 hour? Because I got sleepy. And it was tough, keeping my focus and my mind. But then it got to the point that I was wide awake wondering what happened to these other guys, having no clue. I mean, this was before cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone in my pocket. They would have had to have called, somebody at the front desk of the hotel or something to go to the rooms and send somebody, and that didn't happen. But anyway, the point is that I've experienced watching. And I got focused then on the other guys, wondering what has happened. That these guys, because I knew these fellows to be dependable, good, established church men that would come and pray their hour. If they said they would come and pray that hour, they would do so. But they wasn't showing up. Anyway, eventually somebody did, and then what I had to do was stay awake on the way home, which was hard to do. It was harder to do staying awake driving home than it was to stay awake praying there. So Jesus in verse 39 says he went a little further and he fell on his face and he prayed, saying, "Oh, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me." Now, I'm rereading that because I don't want to lose the emphasis of what the content of his prayer was. He was talking about a cup. Now, see, we probably use a whole different way to describe this sort of thing. It would be more like burden. This burden to pass from me. Maybe even some word more drastic than that. But basically the word cup was used here to describe what's going to happen to Jesus, to fulfill his purpose for being there. And so I don't want to let my experience back in the 1970s some odd time to detract from what the purpose of Jesus' prayer was here. He says, if it be possible, Father, please let this cup pass from me. But if not, or nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Verse 40, and he cometh unto the disciples, and he findeth them asleep, and he said unto Peter, and I can see him kind of kicking Peter in the side. He's saying, Peter, what? Could ye not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, he says in verse 41, that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but boy, the flesh is sleepy. And he went away again, verse 42, the second time, and he prayed, saying, Oh, my Father, if this cup may not pass away from me, except I drink it, thy will be done. Now, he's just saying that if this burden doesn't go away, if I have to go through it, if that's your will, then I want that to be done. Verse 43 says, he came and he found them asleep again. For their eyes were heavy. And he left them and he went away again, and he prayed the third time, saying the same words. He said, Oh, my Father, let this cup pass from me. But if it not pass from me, if I have to drink this cup, your will be done, not mine. Verse 45 says, Then cometh he to his disciples, and he said unto them, Just go ahead and sleep now. Sleep on now, and take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. Behold, he is at hand that doth betray me. And I'm going to, that verse is the end of the reading in our study text for Matthew chapter 26, but I want to read a little more here to complete the story. It says, And while he yet spake, lo, Judas, one of the 12, came, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now, he that betrayed him gave them a sign, saying, Whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he. Hold him fast. And forthwith he came to Jesus, and he said, Hail, Master, and kissed him. And Jesus said unto him, Friend, wherefore art thou come? Then came they, the band of sinners from the elders and the chief priests. Then came they, and they laid hands on Jesus, and they took him. And that's the way it happened. Turn with me to Mark chapter 14. A little bit to the right. A few pages. Mark chapter 14. And this one goes from verse 32 to 42. So Mark chapter 14, verse 32. And it's the same story as what we just have read, just written by a different fella, and therefore a little bit different perspective. Verse 32 says, they came to a place which was called Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, sit ye here while I pray. And he took with him Peter and James and John, and he began to be sore amazed and to be very heavy. And he said unto them, my soul is exceeding sorrowful unto death. Tarry ye here and watch. And he went forward a little, meaning he went a little further. It says, and he fell on the ground, and he prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible unto thee. You can take this cup away from me if you would. Take away this cup from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will. He was a fine son. Do what his daddy said. Carry out the plan. Verse 37. He's finished praying, finished talking to the Father. I don't know how long he talked to the Father. Matthew didn't say. Mark doesn't say. But then in verse 37, he finishes praying. He goes, or he cometh, it says, and he findeth them, the them is the disciples, sleeping. And he said unto Peter, Simon, sleepest thou? Couldst not thou watch 1 hour? Watch ye and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. The spirit truly is ready, but the flesh is sleepy. The flesh is weak. And again, verse 39, he went away and he prayed. And he spake the same words. He prayed this. It's not wrong to pray the same words every time that you pray. It's okay to repeat prayers that you said before. We have an example of Jesus saying the same words. And after he had said the same words again, in verse 39, verse 40, when he returned, he found the disciples asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. And they didn't know what to say to him. Now, the way the scriptures has it, it's neither wist they what to answer him. They didn't know what to say. They were guilty. They got caught sleeping instead of watching. And he cometh the third time, verse 41. And he said to them, and see, we don't get the same whole story that Matthew told, that he went and prayed a third time. It just talks about that he's coming back from his third prayer, is what Mark talks about here. And he cometh back the third time, and he said unto them, sleep on now, and take your rest. It is enough. The hour is come. Behold, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise up, let us go. Lo, he that betrayeth me is at hand. And immediately while he yet spake, cometh Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves, from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. Now those guys sound like religious people, don't they? The chief priests and the scribes and the elders, and that it was see, I say this every once in a while, and so I'm going to say again today, that when Jesus was alive and on earth here, he had more trouble with church people than with anybody else. And the part that I say again and again is, I don't think much has changed. I think still he has as much trouble with church people as he does with the sinners. I can't. I don't want to lump every church leader into that group. I don't mean it that way. But I'm saying just as a group, church people, especially if they become quote unquote successful in their ministry and they got a great big old church, and I've told a story a time or two, and I'll tell it again. When I was, I don't know, 30 years old, something like that. My high school had a 10-year reunion. I was 18 when I graduated, but they didn't have the reunion 10 years. It took 14 years to have a 10-year reunion, so I must have been around 32, something like that.
I must have been in charge of it.
I could have been. Probably not, but man. Anyway, I went back to the city where I grew up and went to the reunion, and there was, I don't know, 6 or 8 of us guys standing around kind of in a circle getting reacquainted and saying, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? And it just so happened that the way we started around, everybody told what they were doing for a living. And the last guy said, I'm the pastor of such and such a church, and I don't remember the name of the church, but he says, I'm the pastor of church somewhere. And we were all, the rest of us were all shocked and surprised, because when we were in high school, he's the least guy you'd ever suspect that would be um, in the ministry. Anyway, we said, "What? You?" And his response was, "Well, there's just as much money in that as there is in anything else."
True.
Showed he had a lot of concern for his sheep. He wasn't in it for his sheep. He wasn't in it to protect his sheep from the lion and the bear.
John, when you were talking about the church people that Jesus encountered and had so much trouble with, somebody brought this to my attention one time in a class, and I've never thought about it, but they said, that's true, but have you ever thought that your mother and dad have raised you Christian, you've studied Christian, you've been Christian for 50, 60 years, and then one day, some guy walks up in the middle, some capital right in the center of the United States and announces, "I'm truly the way," and starts talking about how he's the Son of God. I mean, these people were rooted and grounded in their faith and their worship of God and the way it said it was. So it would be difficult too for me if some person came on the scene now. So I can see at least how, and especially back then, because so many people were not educated or could read or know, so they were really dependent on those leaders that had taught them the way to, what they thought, the way to heaven. And then all of a sudden, here comes Jesus with this great, new, wonderful gospel, and they're like, whoa. You know, it would look too easy to, you know, like if someone told us that, well, now all you have to do now is go to church once a year and you'll be saved. This is the new gospel. We'd be, well, what I just did for real, though, we'd be scratching our heads. So.
All true. And what we need to remember here, as far as timing goes in today's lesson, is that the new gospel hasn't even been established yet. The new gospel was established when he died on the cross.
He was just trying to tell them a different way, though.
That's right. He was trying to prepare them, and he chose 12 guys who were probably uneducated. We know that most of them came from Galilee, and we know what the reputation of Galileans was. What? And all these people that we're here, I'm talking about Acts chapter 2, all these people that we're here and speaking these foreign languages, aren't they Galileans? How could they know these languages? So, yeah, that was the people that Jesus started with were very, I'm just going to use the word raw. They were raw talent. But at this time, when Jesus has gone to pray for his life and or for his death, as the case may be, when Jesus had gone for that and he asked him to just watch for an hour, just watch for an hour, and they couldn't do that. So let me read verse 43 again. It says, "And immediately while he yet spake, cometh Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude with swords and staves, from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. And he," that's Judas, "he that betrayed him," Jesus, "had given them a token, saying, Whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he. Take him and lead him away safely." And as soon as he was come, he goeth straightway to him, and said, Master, Master, and kissed him. And they laid their hands on him, and they took him. Now let's look at Luke's version in Luke chapter 22.
You know, the one thing that Debbie said, it kind of strikes me a little bit, because people will say those things now too, and they're not saying it in the way she is. She's saying it, for us to be more faith. But they'll actually say, "Oh, if somebody came now and said all these things, would you believe them?" But the big difference is what they had, the Jews had, that we don't have now, is they had prophecy. And the one certain people, and certain that he was speaking to, would understand from the prophecy. They'd understand fully that it was him that had come. And they were looking for the Messiah to come. Where we're not looking for that. We have no prophecy. We have nothing of that type, that prophecy that needs to be fulfilled, of a Messiah to come, other than someone who's going to come and make the last day, the resurrection. That's the only thing we have to look forward to. We don't have any prophecy of somebody coming here on earth that's going to establish a kingdom here on earth. We don't have anything like that in prophecy. If we had that, then we might be easily misled by some new Messiah that was to come, and that somebody that was just to come and say, "Oh, I'm the Messiah, listen to me," and if he was doing great wonders. But the thing is, we have no prophecy that says that's ever going to happen. So we would never be deceived by that. See, and they were looking for that. So that's why, like you said, the disciples and everybody, they're looking for the Messiah to come. But yet they were thinking it was going to be a physical kingdom he set up, not a spiritual kingdom.
They were looking for him to overthrow the Romans and set the Jewish people free.
Right.
Is what they were looking for, somebody to come. And because he came the way he came, the church people rejected him. Right. The priests and the elders and the scribes rejected him, even though it had been prophesied in some of these prophetical books over here, especially in Isaiah, that this is the way he was going to come. And for whatever reason, they didn't seem to be, I don't know if educated is the right word, but they certainly weren't prepared for that. Let's look at Luke chapter 22, beginning in verse 39. It says, he came out and went as he was wont to do. He went to the Mount of Olives. He did that many times. This doesn't mean, because we're reading it for the third time, doesn't mean that this is the third time he did it. He'd probably done it 15 times or 40 times. But this, we're still just reading about the same one time. And it says his disciples also followed him. Verse 40, and when he was at the place, he said unto them, pray that ye enter not into temptation. Now, each of these guys that we've read from their reading, Matthew and Mark and now Luke, that portion has been here. Jesus has instructed his disciples to pray that you don't enter into temptation. Do you think that still carries forward to today? Yeah, sure it does. We still are among his disciples. It's just that we are living 2,000 years later, and we know him personally. in the flesh. Okay? We know him personally in the spirit. It says, and he was withdrawn from them about a stone's cast. Now, neither of the other two said that. They said he went away a little further or something like that, and he fell down. Okay, so how far can you throw a stone? You know, not real far. I mean, he wasn't 100 feet away, something like that. And this says he kneeled down. The other two guys says he fell down on his face. But here he kneeled down and prayed, saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. But whatever, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. And in this case, that the other two guys didn't record, it says there appeared an angel unto him from heaven, strengthening him. Do you see what happens when you pray and you ask God to remove a burden? That you get strength somehow. You don't even know where the strength comes from. But in this case, verse 43, there appeared unto him an angel from heaven, strengthening him, and being in an agony, he prayed more earnestly with that angel there. And his sweat was, as it were, great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Now, we didn't get those details in Matthew and Mark, but Luke gives us that. And I've heard, I don't know the word, it's a big long word. You have to pay 2 bits to get to use it or something, but it's some medical word that there is a medical condition that indicates that when you are under such stress, this happens to you, and blood enters into your sweat glands, and that drops of blood will come, and there's a medical term for that. I do not know. I mean, even if I knew it, I couldn't pronounce it. I'm telling you, it's a multi-syllable word that has to do with
hemodroxyl.
yeah,
Phobia or something.
yeah, hema something, because hema's got to do with blood.
Hey, John.
Yes, sir.
I have a hard question to ask. If these guys were asleep, how did they see this?
Say that again.
If these guys were asleep, how did they see this?
He came and kicked them away.
Who saw
Excuse me.
who saw this happen?
Oh, the great drops of blood?
No, just the whole story. If they were asleep, how could they write about what they couldn't see?
I suspect he told them, but I don't know that. But it's a good question. But I suspect, hey, you guys, see, going back to my story of when I prayed 4 hours more than I was supposed to pray or something like that. When I got back to church the next time, I said, hey, you guys, why didn't you show up? Oh, well, it's because we got a phone call telling us, and because of the bad weather, we didn't need to go. Oh, okay. So I let them know that I was aware that they were supposed to have been there and they didn't show up. And I'm suspecting that that's what happened here as well, that Jesus told them. I don't know that for sure.
It's also possible that he prayed a lot more stuff and they didn't see that. They only recording what they saw. You know, they only saw a very short, I mean, basically the prayer that they each one gives account of is just one line. So they might have been awake for the first thing he said, and then they fell asleep for the rest of it. So they only really heard the first line of his prayer, and then they fell asleep. So it's possible too, and same with maybe they woke up a little bit to see the drops of blood, and you know, there's a few things they may have seen, but for the most part, they were asleep.
Yeah.
Maybe when he came back to tell them, you know, could you not, then they could see him. Because it was dark out there. It's a garden out from Jerusalem. It wasn't like they had LED lighting.
And torches.
So when he came to ask them, could you not tarry with me, maybe then they could see that, you know, his face was probably still with perspiration of blood. But I found that condition in Word, and it's hematohydrosis.
See there?
It's so rare that many people don't even know it exists. And I only knew it because of Jesus. And I take everything at face value, but I didn't know the technical, that it's hematohydrosis, and it's real.
Yeah, a lot of times the people on death row get that. That's more common for the people that are on death row. They get under a lot of stress, and they have that condition.
Well, you just described Jesus. He was on death row.
There you go. Yeah,
The cops were coming. They were just down the hill, just coming up. A big crowd. But it says in verse 45 that when he rose up from prayer and was come to his disciples, he found them sleeping for sorrow. Now, I don't really understand. I'll just be first to admit and acknowledge I don't know what that phrase means. He found them sleeping for sorrow. It indicates to me, but I don't know this to be true, but if people are sorry or sorrowful enough, they can't stay awake. They sleep. Or it's easier for them to sleep if they're downtrodden or feel sorrowful. I don't know any better way to say it than that. Verse 46, the final verse of this portion of the lesson says, and he said unto them, that's Jesus said unto the disciples, why sleep ye? Rise and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. And again I will say, don't you suppose that still applies to us today? That we have to be on good terms with our Creator all the time. And Satan is busy about his work. I told a story last week, I think it was, I'm not sure now, that I had heard a fellow on TV talking about there being 3 heavens, and the 3rd heaven way up there was where Jesus and God and angels all were. And the 3rd heaven, that's 1st heaven way up there. 3rd heaven, that's the 3rd heaven way up there where Jesus and God and all this. The 1st heaven is down here on earth where we are. Well, I don't consider this heaven at all. And between here and there is the 2nd heaven, and that's the domain of the demons. And this guy, I was listening to him preach and teach this I don't know what to call it except a theory. And I'm just shaking my head, man, you haven't read the Bible. Because there was a lot of demons that Jesus and his disciples encountered that were in people. The most famous of which is probably the fellow named Legion. He was over here on this side of the Sea of Galilee, right along in there somewhere. And that's where a couple thousand pigs ran down the cliff and into the water and drowned because the demons left the man and went into the pigs. Okay? So the demons aren't just between here and there. But he used the verse of Scripture concerning, and we talked about it briefly. I remember that Michael come down to answer a prayer that had gone up. And it took him 3 weeks to get here to answer the prayer. And he said it was because he had to fight all the demons in between. So that was the basis on which the fellow that I was listening to on TV. Verse 47, again, I will continue just a little bit longer to complete this version. In Luke chapter 22, verse 47, it says, "And while Jesus yet spake," look here, "behold, a multitude, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before the multitude, and drew near unto Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss?" I wonder how he knew that was a betrayal. How that was an indication that he was going to betray him. How did he know that Judas had made the deal with the priests and the scribes and the elders that when we get there, I'll go up and I'll kiss him, and then you'll know that that's the right one. So Jesus seems to know everything. You can't get away with anything. Any other thoughts or comments? That's Jesus' prayer of surrender, and the surrender is that he was giving up to the will of the Father. And he said, Father, look, I don't want to go through this, but if I have to, if that's your will. And we know the rest of the story. We know that he was whipped and that he was hanged on a cross, was hung on a cross. That he died sooner than he was supposed to die. And a Roman soldier came and thrust a spear into his side, and blood and water poured out. Did you have a question, man?
Oh, when I was reading the daily readings on the Daniel 3:14 through 25, and the 3 boys were, in the fire.
Right.
And then Nebuchadnezzar said, there's supposed to be 3, but then there's a 4th. And he looks like the Son of God. How did he come to that?
I don't know. I wish I knew. But I don't know how he knew what the Son of God was supposed to look like. Is that your question? Or did I?
I read that before.
I think it probably is not what we think of when we think of the Son of God.
Okay.
That's what I think.
He thought it was like some sort of deity or something.
An
That's what I was
angel or
wondering.
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, he's seeing something that's supernatural.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of times they refer to sons of God, things like that, especially in the Old Testament. Go back into Genesis, they'll say sons of God, and sometimes just angels, and different things. So a lot of these phrases they're using, it's not what we think of Son of God. We think of Jesus. I don't think he physically seen Jesus. He would have just thought it was another man. I saw another man in there. He would have never said the Son of God. Had to be something different, supernatural about that. Or he wouldn't have said that. If he just saw Jesus in there as a man, he'd have said, "Oh, I saw another man in there. What was he doing?" He wouldn't have said the Son of God. It had to be something supernatural about him. Maybe he had a glow about him, or something. Something was struck him as being supernatural.
I think one of my versions said, like, the likeness, looked like the likeness of Jesus, or
I think it said
If you read
like
enough,
it
if you
was
read
in
enough
form or
verses, you're
something.
gonna get all
Yeah, I know
kinds
Jesus.
I
That's
think it said it
of
was
description.
a form or something.
form,
I think
yeah.
I think that's what the King James.
Yeah, it had, Nebuchadnezzar would have had no concept. No one had no concept of Jesus at that time. That name was not even a name that they would have ever thought of any magnitude. That's why it was very odd when they named him Jesus.
And they had a bunch of gods.
Yeah, they've seen all
Yeah,
kinds of
God
gods.
is-
So gods,
yeah.
it was something to do with supernatural that he's seen.
Well, the supernatural part, as it strikes me, is that we only put 3 men in the fire, but there's 4 of them in there. So where'd that other guy come from? So it was, yeah, supernatural.
There's something supernatural. He had to look different than a normal man
Yeah.
for him to distinguish him and say he is a god. Nebuchadnezzar, I'm just saying in the mind of Nebuchadnezzar, he would have had to see something different about him. That
Yeah.
he wasn't normal. Whether or not,
All right.
And that was the point, I guess.
Yeah.
yeah,
The
but
point
just the
for-
fact that they weren't burning
That
is
was the
amazing.
point.
So next week, we have Paul's prayers for several churches. It's, 3 or 4 different letters that he wrote and prayed in his letters. And that will conclude our study of the great prayers of the Bible. Any other thoughts or comments? Then let's pray. Lord, we are indeed grateful to you and thankful to you that we have the opportunity to come together with our friends of like mind to read your scripture and to talk about it. We thank you for that opportunity. We've come here to learn, not only to learn of you, but also to worship you, and we're going to do that in the name of Jesus of Nazareth, who indeed is our God. Amen. God bless you for being in his house today.